Great. Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you guys for being here. This is Willamette Week's endorsement interview for Measure 26-250. If I could ask just one of you to take 1 to 2 minutes to describe sort of the broad strokes of this measure and what it would do, and also its importance, that would be great. Either one, go ahead.
Dan, you want to go first?
Sure, I can do that. This measure was drafted and put on the ballot by the City of Portland Charter Review Commission in late 2022, as I recall. So it's not an initiative, and the reason for it is pretty simple. Right now, what it does, by the way, is it puts into the charter the creation of a Portland election. Let me get that word exactly right. The Portland Elections Commission, consisting of 9 city residents who collectively represent the city's diversity, and it's appointed by the city council. Basically, the mayor appoints it, and the city council confirms the appointments. And once appointed, a commission member can be removed prior to completion of the term, only by a process outlined in the commission's bylaws and city council confirmation. So it establishes a commission, and the function of the commission are really 2 functions. One is to administer the city's public financing of elections program. And the other is that it says the commission may also implement any other law or program related to elections, campaign finance, or related subjects if delegated by city council or the auditor to the commission. To me, this is a good move because under the current system, administration of election and campaign related programs is disjointed. Some of that is currently, like the public funding program, is administered by an office, the small donor elections office, that has moved, that has no home. That is, it's not specified where its home is. When it was created by the city council back in late 2016, it was assigned to the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. But since then, it has been assigned to various places. It's been within the office of various individual commissioners. It is currently under the office of the city administrator, which is responsible directly to the mayor. So that's the public funding program. However, you'll recall that in 2018, the voters of Portland adopted campaign contribution limits, $500, and disclaimer requirements. All advertisements have to disclose the top 5 dominant contributors, which is anyone who contributes more than $500. Those requirements are administered and enforced by the city auditor. And the reason for that is that that's what we put in the measure, is enforced by the city auditor, because that makes sense. In fact, when the city council adopted the public funding program, their near final draft of that also assigned administration to the city auditor. But the city auditor then refused, said, I'm not going to do it. Because under the existing charter, the city auditor can refuse to do things that aren't specifically assigned to him or her in the charter. So we assigned in the charter enforcement of the campaign finance, limitation and disclaimer requirements to the city auditor, because that does seem to make the most sense.
But Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, for the last 5 years, the auditor basically hasn't enforced the campaign finance regulations.
I would say yes. I would say that the good government groups have problems with the way the way those requirements have been enforced.
What can you give a couple examples of maybe things that the auditor hasn't enforced?
Penalties.
Yeah.
And a couple. What are a couple specific examples of that?
Just this past week, the auditor found that Renee Gonzalez had violated the disclaimer requirements by putting up large signs that didn't have any disclaimer on them at all. But instead, the measure says that the fines for violation of the contribution limits that the fine for any violation is from 2 to 20 times the amount of the contribution or expenditure at issue. Mm-hmm. So here the expenditure at issue would be what he paid to put up create the signs and put them up. But instead of following what the charter says, the city auditor just issued what she calls a letter of education. And she did this many times in 2022, particularly for Mayor Wheeler. Mayor Wheeler violated many requirements of the contribution limits and disclaimer requirements.
And under your guys' measure, you believe that would, how would that be different?
Well, but what we're saying is the 2018 measure that passed had this 2 to 20 times. It wasn't discretion. It didn't say you have the discretion to decide whether to penalize. It said if you find they did it, you have to hit them for 2 to 20 times what it was. And I don't think the auditor has ever penalized anybody financially. Have they in the last 6 years? I can't think of one time.
I can't think of an instance.
And how would your guys' measure address that or change
this
that?
thing?
What it does, let me kind of finish the thought here. What it does is that it puts in the charter this language that says the commission may also implement any other law or program if delegated by the city council or auditor to the commission. So we think the auditor will delegate authority under the contribution limits and disclaimer requirements of the commission. Don't know. If I were writing this, I wouldn't have allowed the discretion to the auditor to give up the authority or not. But that's the way they wrote it.
Who's they?
The Charter Commission.
The Charter Commission.
Yeah, the Charter Commission.
Why? So it seems like that's if one of the issues we're trying to fix is that the auditor right now has discretion, but this ballot measure leaves it up to them. I mean, why would assuming an auditor wants as much power as they can, which I think elected officials do, why would they give that?
I think it's politics. I think that the auditor doesn't want to be seen as hitting people with financial penalties if they for violations of campaign finance laws. I don't think they want that duty. My guess is if there was this independent commission created and it was going to definitely oversee the public funding portion, that the auditor's office would say, it makes just a lot more sense to have that all of the campaign finance reform, public funding, limits, disclosures, all of that should be housed in one place. And that's what I think is going to happen.
So that's relying on the auditor to, you guys are crossing your fingers that the auditor will want to give up that authority.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's sort of half of it, but go ahead.
Sorry, I'm curious how this would, and Dan, you touched on this briefly, but how would this change the small donor elections program? Because right now, like you said, small donor elections program is sort of its own entity office. It's not real clear who has authority over it. How would this ballot measure change that?
Well, instead of having the program essentially under the control of either the mayor, which is where it is now, or under the control of an individual commissioner, which is where it has been in the past, it's under the direct control of this 9-person commission. And I see it as a layer of insulation between the program and politicians who either use the program or can use the program, or whose prospects can be very much affected by the way the program is administered. Let me give you an example of that. As you know, of course, with the charter amendment to change the form of government, the number of candidates in the primary election for city offices was 2 years ago it was 26 candidates in the primary, and now this year there is no primary, so it's 118 candidates. If you look at the general election in 2022, there were 4 candidates. So basically for the general election we've gone from 4 candidates to 118, but the mayor did not absolutely refused to propose any increase in the budget
for the public funding.
For public funding. So the budget stayed at 1.38 million in this year's budget, even though the number of candidates running and potentially using the program increased by a factor of 26. So,
But and Dan, just to add to that though, we lobbied, the good government groups lobbied to have Dan Ryan and Renee Gonzalez and other people, Carmen Rubio, that were elected this year to help put pressure on the mayor to raise the amount of money in the kitty for the public funding, because we knew this was going to happen. There was going to be this cash crunch because there were so many candidates running. And because they were running for office themselves, they were in a weird conflicted position about voting to put more money into the kitty because it would look like it was benefiting them. This independent commission, I think, would solve all that, because those kinds of decisions would be done through this,
So
commission.
Another question though is that
Actually, they recused themselves from voting on things.
Yeah. So, but under this new ballot measure, it's not like this independent commission would get to say we're unilaterally raising our budget to 15 million, right? Like the council is still
They still have to
vote
do it.
on the budget.
They still have to do it. Yeah, the council still have to give them the money.
So how would that? I mean, that was the crux of the issue this time, is that the city council didn't approve a budget increase. So how would this ballot measure fix for that? Because the council still has the power of the budget.
Well, the way I see it is that you'll, under this program, it says that the last paragraph of the charter amendment is that the commission annually notifies the mayor and city council of the funding required to ensure the solvency of the public financing of elections program and other duties carried out by the commission. The commission has a budget as provided by council. Inelegant. But at least
So it doesn't solve it, is the bottom line.
A public statement of the public financing of, the budget that's necessary to maintain the program, and then the city council would have to, contradict that, and the vicious Willamette Week would make an issue of that. But I would also, let me point out that why this matters and why this has mattered in this election cycle, because the city council, the mayor and city council the mayor would not even propose, and the city council did not adopt a larger budget. The program back in January had to reduce the maximum funding for mayor candidates, the maximum public funding, from $750,000 to $100,000. So who did that benefit? It obviously benefited the more establishment politicians and harmed the less establishment politicians who would have depended on public funding more. So that's an example of where the current system directly allows interested politicians to affect the program.
I mean, my question about that though, Dan, is that when they did lower it from 750 to 100, first of all, in the Elections Commission, my understanding is that when they made that decision, the city council had no power to change it, right? And they were pissed. I mean, Mingus Maps was pissed, Carmen Rubio was pissed, Dan Ryan was pissed, Renee Gonzalez was pissed. I mean, so they weren't happy with it already, and they also had no ability to. So I don't know. I guess that argument doesn't feel particularly salient.
They lowered that because they didn't have enough money. This all started because Mayor Wheeler hated this public
ballot
funding.
measure, the money problem isn't going to be solved.
It's not directly solved.
That's true.
It's not directly solved. It is sort of.
I think we're supportive of it. I think we're supportive of it more because for two main reasons. One, getting it out of being under the thumb of directly under the politicians, I think is helpful when you're talking about elections, so that you don't have any sort of conflicts involving the people that are deciding things and who their bosses are. I think that's the big one. And then also I think it's going to make the enforcement, assuming we can get the auditor to give up, the contributions and the disclosures. If we can have one independent commission that oversees all of the Portland elections, I think it'll be a lot cleaner of a system.
It seems like there's a lot of kind of crossing fingers with this. One, that the city council will approve a larger budget, and two, that the auditor will give up this power that they may not want to give up.
We as good government groups didn't write this. The Charter Review Commission wrote it. We support it, but it's going to take some lobbying from good government groups to make it have
you
the
guys
teeth
are
that we
prepared
want.
to do that lobbying?
Yeah, I mean that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is one of the few measures that I didn't write.
Yeah.
So first of all,
So it's
you're
not
saying
perfect.
the city auditor is breaking the law.
The city auditor is not following the law when they don't. Yes, our charter, when it goes into the charter and it says you must do this and they don't do it, this has been happening over and over and over
So
again.
why, I mean, look, I understand that you have to be here to defend this measure, but
Right.
why are you not suing the city? I mean, it seems like you have more powerful tools at your disposal than coming here and pushing this measure that's a half measure.
We did. We had several, back in 2022, we had several, lawsuits pending because we put in the charter amendment that decisions of the city auditor, enforcement decisions could be appealed directly to the Multnomah County Circuit Court. So we did have several cases started, but other priorities prevailed back then, and I didn't have time to pursue them.
Okay, so it's a time issue. Okay, my second question is this. I mean, I feel like we're seeing this a lot in Portland politics right now, and particularly in the current charter amendments, that the city is making massive changes to things that require votes to go back and change, and I'm thinking, the decriminalization. I mean, why is this the best method to fix the problem you guys are talking about? Like, why do we need to actually change the city charter in order to do this? And are we not just going to regret it later and have to go in and fix the little things, which you guys are already saying need to be fixed in this, and now we have to go out and get another vote in order to do it? I mean, I'm just I'm starting to get a little concerned.
I think this is an improvement. I think having 9 members that are a part of an independent commission that will oversee elections that are not, they're initially going to be appointed by the elected officials, but then they will be independent. I think it's longer term going to be a better solution than we have right now. Do I think this is the best written or best ideal system? No, but it's. The question is, should we support this now on the ballot? And I think the answer is yes.
So why were you guys not able, I mean, you're the ones sitting here, clearly you are the ones that are supposed to be selling this. Why were you not able to get this written the way that you think it should have been written?
Well, I was not one of the 15 members on the Charter Review Commission that wrote all this stuff.
So why are they not here defending this?
I think that they support this. They were invited to be here, some of them. So
Several of them wrote a voter pamphlet argument for it. They're not here.
The Portland, I think we've seen with a lot of commissions that they are just as politically motivated as not commissions. I mean, how do you?
Which ones in examples?
Would you? I'm not going to say examples. I gotta stay. But they are people too who serve on these commissions, and they're also appointed. I mean, how do you ensure that? What are the parameters in this ballot measure around the composition of who is going to make up this commission?
The measure is very few of that, very little of that. It just says the commission consists of 9 city residents who collectively represent the city's diversity. To fill vacancies, the commission may make non-binding candidate recommendations for mayoral appointment and city council confirmation. So it's basically up to the mayor and city council. So in my mind, it's not an ideal system. I assume that the members of the Charter Commission who were drafting this thought this was as far as they could go. If I had drafted it, it would have looked differently. It would have looked different. But it is, in any event, a layer of insulation. There does exist already a Portland Election Commission, just a purely advisory Portland Election Commission.
Yeah.
I think
So there was one statement in support of this ballot measure in the voters pamphlet that says the commission would be made up of volunteers who are election experts and community leaders, but that doesn't seem like that is in the ballot. Okay, so that is not accurate.
Well, one would hope that those were who they pick.
But it's not quite as binary as would be made up of volunteers who are election experts.
True.
Okay. Would you guys have, if you were to write this measure, what parameters would you put around the composition of this, if any?
Good question.
Well, I think that I frequently, refer back to the redistricting commission. Independent redistricting commission measure IP 14 of 2024 that we didn't collect enough signatures to get on the ballot. That used a system where anyone, it is modeled basically on the California Redistricting Commission system, where anyone, any resident of in this case the city, could apply to be on the commission. There are criteria for exclusion, that you can't be a current or former city employee or officer, a current or former lobbyist registered, the city registers lobbyist registered with the city, can't be a big campaign donor over the past 5 years, etc. And then have a body, and what we used in the redistricting commission is a panel of state administrative law judges, look at the applications and apply those criteria, and then you take the body of qualified applicants and choose at least half of the members of the commission by lottery. That's the way California does it. I think that's the way Arizona might do it as well for the redistricting commission. And then those persons selected by lottery are then tasked with adding a few additional persons to the commission on the basis of expertise. That is, you ask the first, let's say it's in this case a 9-member commission, might appoint the first 5 or 6 by sortition, by lottery.
So this is the ideal how.
This is an example of people have given a lot of thought about how to come up with a diverse commission. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a diverse commission that is very hard to manipulate.
I mean, I would, if I was, you asked if I was drafting this, there's only, I would say, a few dozen people in the entire state that are quite knowledgeable about campaign finance reform, to a level of detail that I would think that would make sense for at least some of them to be on a commission like this. And I would hope that people would have election law background, that they would ideally have some lawyers on there, and also some people that have worked on campaigns. I mean, I would have kind of a hybrid of like.
Would you have any normies? I mean, people that
had zero electoral experience. I mean, if this was in an ideal world, I mean, I would want some people that were at least politically sophisticated enough to know how outside money and influence works, and the importance of the public funding system and limits. And I mean, I would want people that understood that conceptually.
Okay. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily, if your ideal composition, I wouldn't say that's really representative of the city. I mean, you said there's only.
But I mean, this is their job. They are there to administer our elections, and they should have some experience.
Right, but again, I think what. I mean,
put it this way. There was a lot of members of the Charter Review Commission that did not have any deep, intense knowledge about campaign finance reform and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And they're the ones who drafted this measure.
Does this, I mean, it sounds like this is obviously a very imperfect measure according to you guys. You're putting a lot of trust in the actual implementation of it because there's very little set out. I mean,
what we know, Sophie, is that the current system's not working. So,
but is it always better to throw out the current system if we don't have any idea what, like?
I think that it's going to come down to how well do we lobby this new city council to put good people on this commission, who's our mayor, and then it's going to be up to us as good government advocates to try and lobby this new commission to take the power over for the limits and the disclosures from the auditor if we can, and then we'll at least have one house. The other thing you guys have to put into mind here is that this commission is going to have to work with Multnomah County Elections Office, because Multnomah County Elections Office oversees the county elections, and the county is currently looking at putting in a similar public matching public funding system for county races in the coming years.
So if this commission is supposed to be completely independent, it seems like after the fact it shouldn't be subject to lobbying by anyone, not by good government. Not, I mean, if it's subject to lobbying by good government groups, it's also subject to lobbying by.
When I say lobbying, I'm not saying call up and call in a favor with somebody on the commission. I'm saying go to their events and present like a public member and push for them to do things. I mean, that's what I'm talking about, lobbying. So
The commission should adopt, rules of the, prohibit ex parte contacts, that sort of thing. The kind of rules that apply, like in the Public Utilities Commission or other government agencies.
But that's not in the measure.
Not in the
as it
measure.
stands.
Okay, if this measure does not pass, do you guys have a route to bring the fixes you think should be in there forward? Like, what would a time frame of that look like? What would be your next move?
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
the question, Dan, is if this failed, what would good government advocates do in relation to the city races moving forward? Well, we have talked about redoing another charter amendment that would have better drill down provisions. What we tried to pass at the state on this last ballot measure wasn't just say I'm Oregonians for good puppies and that's who's giving money. It's drilled down 3-4 layers to figure out who the original true source donor is, and we've been working with the Campaign Legal Center out of DC, and they passed similar measure in Arizona and one in Alaska, and so that we had kind of modeled it off of that national model. When we passed the City of Portland measure in 2018, we didn't have that national expertise helping us draft it, and so we've been discussing actually maybe coming back in 2026, 2028 at the City of Portland to have better drill down because Renee Gonzalez just got $250,000 in IE, right? Like, it would be nice to have people for Portland and other folks have to drill down and figure out who's actually giving the money in their donations. That's, I think, if I'm looking at one thing that's really unhealthy in our local politics right now, it's with the limits that we've put in place and with the public funding limited budgets, IEs are playing a much larger role, and we don't have very good drill down on those ones we passed. So if we did that and this failed, I could see us also thinking about putting together some kind of independent commission like we're talking about here.
And in order to do any of that, we would need about 60,000 signatures, and the city charter allows 6 months to collect those. So it's not like anyone can go out and just put a ballot measure on the ballot. It's a large effort to do that.
Yeah.
I'm curious why, obviously was it the second wave during which the Charter Commission created this measure, or was it in November 2022? Because, right,
It was the same Charter Commission.
Same Charter Commission.
It was what they call phase 2.
Okay, all right. So it's been, almost 2 years since then. It seems like if you guys were unhappy with parts of this measure, and it seems like things are not as baked as you guys, as skeptical good government people would want, why not bring an alternative measure? Why go to bat?
Because we spent all of our life force energy trying to pass statewide campaign finance law, because we've been one of 5 states with no limits at all on money in politics for our whole lives. And so that was our main focus over the last year. And then the legislative compromise happened in February, and so March, and so we didn't have time to put together a ballot measure on this. So, but we're currently wondering right now what our next big things are, and fixing the Portland City disclosure part is one of our big ideas.
I'm curious. I feel like I'd like to get your guys' take on this. It seems like the Small Donor Elections Program and the Elections Commission was not at all equipped for 118 people in multiple ways, both money-wise, rules-wise. I think we're seeing that there's a lot of holes in this program, and maybe this is just a one-off. We're probably never going to have 120 people running again. But is there, what am I trying to ask here? What do you guys see as the biggest holes right now in the program? And do you think they're actually things that need to be addressed, or do you think this is sort of just a one-off?
The Small Donor Elections Program?
Yeah.
Well, I think the first problem is budget. You have to slash the program by a factor of 7 for mayor and by a factor of about 3 for other council candidates. That doesn't help. Second is lack of staff. They are they are behind in processing the contributions in order to match them. And for some candidates, it's a big problem because they're not getting their matching funds. Well, some candidates are getting their matching funds, some candidates aren't. And the city people say it's because of lack of staff to process them, so that's a problem. The other problem is the convoluted decision-making that exists now because of the interplay between the contribution limits, the disclaimer requirements, and the public funding program being in two different places. So when someone makes a complaint, for example, let's say I think that someone is...
And the water thing, I tell you about PG&E and like contaminated water, and like that's like a very real thing that's happened to me. So like I focused on the water, and then the school shooting thing. My wife asked me, and she goes, "Well, what would you do about it?"
So
what would you
just
do now?
I'm sure it's very complicated, but give us a very quick pitch on how this works.
It's not very complicated, honestly. I think if you were, I bet you Ms. Bynum would look at it and just be like, I can't believe nobody's done this yet. Like it's super simple. I don't want to go into details with it until I have some paperwork.
Okay,
pushed through,
that makes sense.
because
All right.
then it would
All
be
right. Okay.
right in
All
the
right.
public sphere.
All right.
But I'll give you a little synopsis. If it can detect a potential threat, right, and activate immediately, I've got some code written in there to where a human has to be the deciding factor, before anything activates, so nobody gets hurt, lawsuits, insurance, all this nonsense, right? But it does work.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll hear more about it. We'll write a story about it.
Man, I always pose this to people. I did an interview with this independent network, and they're supposed to be publishing something about it, and he asked me, he goes, "Oh, do you want me to say anything about it?" I go, "Well, I mean, you're in a situation where, and especially the media, it's like you hear this thing and it seems like it can be wonderful and it can be great. Wow, I wish we could do that, and I hope it works out for you, But it is a real thing, and instead of just hoping it works out for me, like you can help me make it work out for me."
Yeah. Representative Bynum, what's the biggest mistake you made in the legislature, and what did you learn from it? And don't tell me it was caring too much or trying too hard.
I always thought my kids were heavy. I always thought that they presented an impediment to me being effective, because it's hard to make friends when you have to go home at night, or you can't, I think I spent maybe one night away from my family in my 8 years, maybe 2. And so, I thought they were heavy, and I thought that they were holding me back from being as great as I could be.
Yeah.
When in fact, when I finally started sharing the things that I was experiencing as a mom, like today, I just got an email from my husband asking the counselor, "Hey, can you help our son with his locker?" And I'm like, it's 4 weeks in, right? But there are probably a lot of parents of kids with special needs that need help. And I can start talking about that. And when I did start talking about that, like kids with special needs, or the challenges we were having in school, or the challenges that we were facing when my daughter was trying to apply to dental school, and how much it was costing, and how much debt that she was faced with, or how she was picking a place to go to school based on where her reproductive rights were protected. When I started talking about that and leaning into that, I think that's when I became much better.
Okay. Did you ever take a vote that you wish you could untake?
There was one, and I try not to dwell on it, but there was one, and it was about, oh gosh, it had something to do, I wish I had tweaked it. I think it was with missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I think I wish I had pushed harder for, it was a bill to coordinate between the communities, the Native American communities and Oregon State Police. And I think in the committee hearing, there was a tweak that I probably should have pushed harder for and placed a no vote in order to get there. And then I think, as we talked in the last meeting about, was a vote on trying to make sure that the law applied to people fairly when they're accused of like sexual assault.
So how would you vote? What would you have done?
I wouldn't have necessarily voted negatively. I would have had a good vote to take in the first place. I would have been able to push the legislature to say, hey, before you bring this bill up, I see this gap here, and I think we should fix it. And they all agreed, but they wanted to fix it on the back end instead of the front end. So
Any other questions? All right, we're out of time. Been a long day, and I'm sure it's been a long day for you guys. So we have one last question for you that we ask every candidate in this cycle, in every race, and that's, what were you best known for in high school?
Honestly, I was kind of an outcast in high school. I was homeless, like I said, at 16, so not really the popular kid. I guess I was best known for that, and it was kind of a bummer. So I ain't got nothing good for you.
How long were you homeless?
About 5 years.
And how much of that time did you sleep outside?
About a year and a half, and then it was a lot of from place to place, and just trying to get back on your feet and figure things out. But when you're a kid, like a minor, I remember having a buddy of mine forge some documents so I could work at Arby's, because you had to have an adult say that you can work a job. Things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Representative, what were you best known for in high school?
I was the school mascot for a little while.
And I think I remember you went to school in Virginia, right?
I did.
And what was the mascot?
Snails.
What?
Snails.
Do you have any pictures?
No.
How's that like a profile?
The chant was "Go Go Escargot," and our Motto was "Make haste slowly."
So
It's
were you a
Festina
cooked
Lente.
snail?
Sorry?
Were you a cooked snail?
No. But it was, it was a girls' school. Sports at that time weren't really a big deal. They played soccer and lacrosse and field hockey.
Yeah.
But
Did you have a costume?
Yeah, it was like a soft situation that you velcroed on, and it was red and white. And you would just wear a sweatsuit.
Any regrets?
No regrets. I'm a total sports mom, probably because of that experience. I'm not a super athlete, but I am super competitive, and I'm a big cheerleader. So
great. That's a great answer. We have not had many people who were snails in high school.
There we go. All right.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Be well.